Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kostuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from, where are we? Delaware? Maryland? This is
Probably
Wisdom of the
95.
Sages. We're somewhere on 95 South, heading south. This is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kostuba Das. Welcome to the show. Making the Srimad Bhagavatam accessible to the world. That's our vision statement, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. What's our vision statement, Linda? Linda, put it up on the board.
I think that was it.
Okay, a cop's passing us right now. We
Oh,
are
they're
driving on
they're pulling you
95.
over.
They're pulling us,
I can see that.
over. There are no podcasts going. Anyway, we're heading south. It's pouring rain. We left that up at 1:30 in the morning. I got 5 hours of sleep. Drove. We got Mara, my daughter Sachi, my little boy Tarun, and Sachi's boyfriend Ganesham, and we're heading 95 South all the way to Alachua, Florida.
This is
Basically one
pure-
highway till Jacksonville.
This is, first of all, your camera's like, yeah, there you go.
It's, you know, it's my computer on my legs is sliding all over town. There we go.
Second of all, this sounds like one of those National Lampoon movies, if I've ever heard one, Raghunath.
It is sort of like vacation. Alachua vacation. It's gonna pour rain all the way through Georgia. We're lucky we got out of upstate New York because it was raining and ice. And I was like, should we do this? Is this a sign from God not to do it? Or a sign from God to keep, follow through with your plan and just be determined? I chose follow through with the plan.
And it made all the difference.
Well, yeah. Now it's warmer. It's like 45 degrees.
You didn't
and
even
it's just
catch
pouring.
that reference, Raghunath? You have a tattoo of it on your arm, don't you?
What reference?
Following the path less whatever.
Oh, I followed the path less traveled, the road less traveled, and it made all the difference. Robert Frost, thank you. So anyway, it's Q&A day for those who are new to the show. Welcome. We take the questions from our audience. Hare Krishna. It's that narrow road.
Raghunath, you're gonna have to focus on the show.
It's
not
hard.
on the
It's
road.
hard, man. You know what?
Yeah.
Me and Parmenan, they got in a car accident. It's in my book.
Yeah.
When we were on the road, ever since that, then I'm a lousy passenger driver. I'm all over the place, and I cannot sleep in a car without going, "Are you okay? Are you awake?" I have to drive. I have to have this sense of controlness in my life, or else I freak out.
You have no control, Raghunath. Just...
I know. Truthfully, we have no control. But it's Q&A day. Any announcements, Kostuba? Mara's not allowed to make announcements today.
There's a Bhakti recovery meetings today. I don't know when.
Okay, good.
And tomorrow we'll on at the same time, 8 a.m. Eastern time, and it'll be our Gaur Purnima special.
All right. Looking forward to that.
The divine appearance of Sri Chaitanya.
We're making this trip down, Lord Chaitanya Charitamrita trip. We're going to listen to it all the way down to get inspired for tomorrow. Lord Chaitanya, he made understanding Vedic teachings easy and he extracted the essence. So if you're interested in yoga, meditation, everything that the Vedas have to offer, Lord Chaitanya is that source of getting to the main thing.
Okay.
Really appreciate Lord Chaitanya. And tomorrow's his appearance day, so massive celebrations all over the world. Okay, so let's get right into the questions. What do you say? This is a good
I'm
question.
down.
All right, this is from Anonymous.
Okay. Always the juiciest ones.
Always the best, of course. Anonymous via email. And that's how you can send in your questions via email if you like. wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com.
Okay.
Dear sages, please
Actually,
accept my
what about
humble
the sages,
obeisances.
right? The sages are in
Yeah.
the pages. We should make that.
The sages are in the pages. We are just the readers
But we do
of the
appreciate
books.
your kindness.
But dear sages, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I thank you again for your beautiful service. I really look forward to my daily dose of Bhagavatam. I have a question I was hoping you could help with.
Okay.
Srila Prabhupada writes many times about how we should associate with the devotees only. And yet in other places, he talks about how a first-class devotee sees Krishna everywhere and in everything. Do these contradict each other? And they give some examples that I'm not going to read.
Okay.
I ask because my husband and I are totally at odds with how to practice this particular teaching. On a side note, they're both interested in bhakti. It's not like one of them is not interested. They're both
Well,
interested.
That's going to come out.
Okay. I have kept in touch with my friends from pre-ISKCON or Hare Krishna days due to their character. They are kind, non-judgmental, respect boundaries, and many of them have faith, but may call Krishna Allah, God, or higher power.
Okay.
Yes, I get that the philosophy isn't exactly the same as ours, but it doesn't matter to me. We've known each other since we were children and been through life's up and downs together. Exams,
Jobs.
examples are jobs, parents, illness, etc. And I joined a 12-step program, which is not part of the BRG. And my
recovery
husband was hugely triggered by this.
Okay.
I have devotee friends too, but I don't feel like my non-devotee friends need to be ditched. To me, it seems extremely extreme to only associate with devotees. But my husband feels like if we want to get Krishna prema quickly, we need to hang out with people who are aiming for the same thing. I see his point, and perhaps I'm just not ready to let go, but I also feel like I'd regret isolating myself on the basis that some people don't use the same word for Krishna as I do. Yet it is easier to speak to the people who follow the same lifestyle, who get the commitment to chanting, the desire to eat prasadam only, etc. But surely occasionally stepping out of that isn't going to harm things. Is it? Thank you. Is it?
It's our thing, is it?
That's our thing, is it? Can I answer this one, Mr.
What can we
Mr.
both?
K? No. One
Okay,
per
well, then I'm
question.
going to answer it.
No, I'm gonna.
Okay.
Well, you know why? Because I've been trying to use an example of this TV show that me and Mara watched. It was a 4-part series on Netflix called Unorthodox. And it was about I might even get the whole thing wrong, the premise, but it was about this girl born in a Hasidic Jewish family in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And, that's a pretty strict, air quotes, cult in one sense. And I don't mean a dangerous cult necessarily, but it's just sort of like they are into their own culture and they isolate themselves or cushion themselves from the rest of the world. And there's not a lot of room for stepping outside that circle. Like she was a piano player, but she had to do it secret. She had to learn secretly and she couldn't perform publicly. And there were a lot of rules upon men and women. And there were a lot of, I like to call them sort of leashes that they're put on. And it reminded me of living in an ashram. There was a lot of leashes that we had. One of the leashes I was on when I was in the ashram was when I was a new devotee, I was highly discouraged from visiting my family. And I always was like, hey, back off. I back off. I'm going to go visit my mother. I wouldn't like, I
I
would
remember I did
go.
that to you once, Raghunath. I remember that.
You might have been one of the ones
I
shaming
remember.
me.
I remember. It
Where
was.
are you going?
It wasn't. No, but it wasn't that I was just saying don't see your family, but it was that there was a particular event going on, and I was saying, yeah, I forget who it was, but it had
There's a
some.
particular what?
I think there was a particular Swami speaking at a particular event, and I'm saying, especially in those early days, we saw like the close associates of Srila Prabhupada as practically like the apostles of Jesus. I was like,
Right.
you're gonna miss this
You're
opportunity
going to miss out
to go
and
see
go
your
see your,
family.
yeah, I get it. And so, and this is the point I want to bring up. So I was encouraged by maybe senior devotees and Kostuba not to go home, but I just went anyway. And in retrospect, I think we have such a great thing right now with Wisdom of the Sages because we are, in one sense, on a leash, yet we're sort of off the leash as well. Like, for example, there's a reason why a dog is on a leash. I know with my own dog, he's not so responsible and he will wander away if he's not leashed. He will wander off the yard and sometimes into really dangerous situations, like off my dirt road and into the main road. And there's been many times where we've had calls from people say, hey, is this your dog? We found him walking on 295, which is like a main thoroughfare, and he could easily get killed. At the same time, you want to give him some freedom too, and you don't want to just keep a dog on a leash. It kills me when I see dogs on leashes all the time, even if it's a long leash. So this is the thing about this TV show Unorthodox is she sort of breaks away and sort of runs away from the Hasidic Jewish community. And now she's hanging out with her cool, free, artistic friends who are like encouraging and encouraging her artistic self. But at the same time, she's, falling into a culture that is got no parameters or no boundaries. So I think with the back to the question here, there is a leash put in place that Prabhupada says, hey, don't associate with any non-devotees. And for some people, they're like, yes, not going to do that. Not going to go see my parents. Not going to go off my yard. Not going to do it. I'm going to put the leash on at all times. And then some of them, like this lady saying, you know what, I want to go off my leash. And you know what, I trust myself. I'm not going to walk in the road. And they both have some validity to it. And sometimes when the leash is on, we can really get caught up in a short-sighted, like she's saying also, in a short-sighted view of reality. And we can maybe not take in other information from other sources outside of our bubble that can also assist me on my spiritual path. That's one reason why we like introduce nuggets. If you're unfamiliar with our show, it's where we bring in a spiritual or secular thinker, philosopher, yet speaks relevant truth that we can apply to our life and is in line with the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, or at least their statement is. And we think, wow, now I can see the Bhagavatam through Aristotle or through Tolstoy or something like that. And so some people really like that and appreciate it. And some people will criticize us and say, why aren't you sticking to the Bhagavatam? There's so many great saints you could quote. So it's this idea of sticking to a tradition or being caught up in a tradition where you feel hindered and you feel sort of like your wings have been clipped. And I think everybody's got to make that individual choice. And if you are off the leash, you have to be careful not to wander into the road. You have to be careful not to wander into Maya. And, you go to a 12-step meeting like she said she did. Sometimes there's a lot of Maya in 12-step meetings, because you're dealing with all types of people who have sometimes very weak boundaries or are new to recovery or don't have the same values you do. So you have to be very strict in your values, because I will say the values we hold on our bhakti path, it's a very, very high standard. And sometimes it can be a little suffocating to some people, and sometimes they are exactly what we need. So it's hard to give you a straight answer because it sounds like you're understandably two different individuals that need different things. And within any relationship, there's got to be some respect for what each other's needs. But at the same time, you also want to be in a place where you're not doing something to really, if it's going to really aggravate your partner as well. So your partner may have to give a little bit, but sometimes they're so caught up in their own maybe insecurities that they can't necessarily let you off the leash that much. And it's a cross between you sort of like which we're acquiescing or him loosening up. There's got to be some balance, and maybe that's something you can work on necessarily with a therapist or a counselor, because I don't know both of you. You know, sometimes people are really, really in their own fear mode, and their fear they're going to lose you. And sometimes there's some truth to that. Maybe maybe you're a flirt, or maybe you're not, but that person was abandoned at a young age, and therefore they're not trustworthy, and they need a very tight leash, and they need that control. I know someone like Mara. She's, what do you call it? She's not jealous at all. She has no jealousy. She's not suspicious. She's not, because she had a very, very solid household, where she grew up, you know, to talk to a girl. She wouldn't be jealous at all. It's not just how she rolls. But some people, they need a little tighter leash in a relationship, and sometimes you have to respect that. And sometimes that person also has to grow out of their own insecurity and develop trust, and that's part of their growth as well. So it's going to be unique in all cultures. Did you like where I was going with that? With these multiple analogies: the leash, the
So
dirt road, the
essentially,
dog collar, the
essentially what
orthodox.
essentially what you're saying is you don't know the answer, which I
Well,
appreciate.
it's
I
gonna
feel
be
the same way.
unique, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be unique in different situations, and sometimes it's a combination of both. And sometimes your partner is in so much anxiety that if they were to give you any leash, it's gonna cause like so much hell in their life. But truthfully, that hell could also wreck the relationship.
No, I agree. I'm kind of in the same place where you are, Raghunath. In other words,
Mm,
in reading this letter, we really don't know.
mm,
There's two competing principles here.
right.
One is I think everyone accepts that who we associate with is very important in our life in general. And when it comes to spiritual practice and bhakti practice, it's been laid out for us in our ancient sacred texts that this is very important, right? Who you're associating with, the consciousness of the people that you associate with, particularly closely in terms of friendships, that's going to become important, and that will affect your own consciousness. Okay, so everyone accepts that. Now the question is your husband's concern, is he right on when he's saying the people that you're associating with, they're not involved in the same bhakti practice as you are, and their association is going to drag you down? And I kind of sense that it's likely that in this marriage, it's two people going into it together saying, let's practice bhakti together seriously and let's make this the focus of our life. And so if that's the case, then the husband may be saying, we kind of went into this with a certain understanding, and it seems like you're not really living up to your part, and that concerns me. I'm concerned for you. I'm concerned for how it affects our own unity and this path that we're walking on, and so on.
They're talking about our marriage, you and me, Kostuba. You're him and I'm her.
Maybe. And so then so maybe he's right on. Maybe he's got the whole thing figured out,
Maybe
and
she's right on.
well, just 1 second, I'm going to go there. But maybe that concern is 100% on the mark. Now the other side of that question is that when we approach bhakti, an immature practitioner is likely more concerned with the external, superficial aspect of the practice, whereas someone that's deeper is going for the more spiritual substance, right? So it sounds like what you're saying here is that my husband, he wants me to reject people because they are not part of our official spiritual group. But what I see in them is that they're focused on the same spiritual essence that I'm focused on. And so that's a deeper understanding. I don't need to reject them based on superficial things. Why can't he see things? And Prabhupada's, and then well, okay, so those are the two competing viewpoints. Now, my guess is it's probably lying somewhere in the middle, right? It's like there's probably truth on both sides, and probably the concern and the ideas on both sides both have some validity, even in this particular case. I doubt it swings all the way to one side. I liked what you shared, Raghunath, about it. You mentioned something about like mediation or something like that, or counselor or something like that. I'm not saying that you need to go to a counselor or a mediator, but I do feel like there's not clear communication, that it's very likely that the two sides are not really understanding each other. I'll share a couple things. One is that our friend mentioned that Srila Prabhupada said how a first-class devotee of Krishna sees Krishna everywhere and in everything. Well, that's true. But are we those first? When he says first class, that's not even, he's not just speaking in a general sense. He's alluding to something very specific, right? He's alluding to the Mahabhagavad. It said that there's 3 levels of devotees, right? And the third class devotee sees things in a certain way, and the second class devotee is making very clear distinctions and really considering who they associate with and how they associate with them. And the first class devotee, the person that's already on an incredibly high level of awareness, of spiritual awareness, for them, yeah, they see Krishna everywhere, but we're not like that. If we're not on that level, we need to be very careful who we're associating with, and if we are aware of Krishna when we're in their presence, or do we become less aware of Krishna when we're in their presence? So that's one thing. She mentioned that her husband becomes hugely triggered by the fact that she's in a 12-step program that's not a bhakti 12-step program. I would imagine if we asked him, he would say, I'm not hugely triggered. I'm just very concerned. He may have valid concerns. He may have. I guess what I'm saying is when we use language like that, it's likely we don't understand each other so well. We really need to be able to articulate the concerns of the other person. And this would be the first thing I suggest, right? I'll share one more example. When she wrote, I regret isolating myself on the basis that some people don't use the same word for Krishna as I do. My guess is that does not encapsulate your husband's concern. I doubt it's just merely the fact that they use another name to refer to God. I would imagine he has concerns that go beyond that. And so when you talk to each other, if you're just throwing these kind of superficial characterizations of the other person's position back and forth, then you don't get anywhere. So you really have to sit down and say, let me see if I understand your concern. You seem to be concerned that my seriousness and commitment to practicing bhakti is being compromised in an important way by the people that I'm associating with. Is that correct? Yes, that's it. It's not just the name Krishna. That's my concern. Okay, and then he should be able to say your concerns. Your point is that you have some good friends in life. They may not be part of your particular spiritual group, but they're valuable people and you value their friendship, and their friendship is not in any way compromising the commitment and the commitment to your practice and the evolution of your spiritual awareness. Okay, now at least we understand each other. My guess is it's something like that, right? And then you can talk. Well, how do you see it affecting me? Do you actually see it affecting me? And can you show me how it's affected me in a negative way? Because I could share you some ways that I feel that it's helped me in a positive way. And in this way, you try to really understand each other, and I think that's where this has to go. I think that's where this has to go. It could be, it could go either way. And here's another point, and I think Raghunath kind of spoke a little bit to this too. Let's say that there's truth in what, let's say that the two of you did kind of go into this union with the idea that, yes, we want to practice this together in a serious way. That's why we're choosing each other as lifelong partners, because we both share that commitment. It's a very fundamental part of our relationship. And let's say that your husband is recognizing some truth. There's some truth in what he's saying, that maybe her focus is becoming a little bit less sharp because she hangs out with these friends. And he wants to get you out of his own compassion for you, and maybe even his own concern for his own practice. He wants to make sure we're all staying focused, right? And his way of doing that is to kind of pressure you to leave these friends behind in some way. That may not work. You know, he might have to try another strategy, which might require patience. Like, if this is not devastating to your spiritual practice, right? If it isn't, like, it's one thing if it's really, if it's really compromising your focus. Maybe it is affecting your focus, but not in such a devastating way. Then he might just have to inspire you with patience. He might just have to evolve himself, and with the idea that if I stay very focused, and I'm not alienating her by pressurizing her to give up friends that are important to her, just by my own focus and the own happiness that's developing in my life, when she sees that the happiness that I'm developing with my clearer focus, then she will be inspired, to follow. So we can't always push people to doing these things. And I have a feeling all these things are at play. I think we need to understand each other very clearly. We need to be able to articulate very clearly the position of the other person so well that they say, you said that even better than I can say it. That should be the test. And when you really understand each other, then you can talk. Then you can really talk about this and see how it goes. Then both sides have to be open to understanding the other person's viewpoint. And ultimately, we can't exactly make people do the things we want them to do. They have to. It's so much. If he were to pressure her to give up these friends, there's a good possibility that that's going to manifest in some sort of resentment that's going to be problematic to the relationship. If she's going to let go of hanging out with those friends, if it is a real problem, she's going to need to be inspired to do it for this to grow in a healthy way. I think that's an important point here. So all of this is, up and out there, and two mature people have to try to work through this together. What do you say, Roga?
Yeah, I think that's right on. Unless you can be big enough to be empathetic, there's going to be resentment.
Both sides.
The more I was thinking about this, the more I realized this is a very, very common thing where I'm just going to maybe call you out on it and just see.
Roga, you froze up for a second.
Are you a flirt? Are you a flirt? Okay.
Are you a flirt?
It's a common thing. Are you a flirt? Are you a flirt? Do you need a lot of validation? And see, sometimes what happens is we search out the very person that is going to push all of our buttons. And of course, that's a great thing to grow. So a person who's maybe riddled with anxiety picks a person who and has maybe no boundaries, or was perhaps, and because stemming from a type of abandonment, they choose a person who is emotionally unavailable and will not has no desire to settle down or something like that. I'm not saying this is you in this case, but we pick a person who is also, out there, need tons of validation. And because of that, the very person whom I love, whom I'm in partnership, is triggering me with everything. And therefore, sure, that person has some anxiety, but I'm acting in such a way that's exacerbating it. So one question for the writer, the lady of this, is, am I a flirt that needs a lot of validation? Because part of loving a person Part of being in love, part of like we said yesterday, part of raising kids is I'm not doing this to be happy. Did we say that in class yesterday?
We
I'm
spoke
doing
kind of
this
about
to
that. Yeah.
grow. I'm doing this to evolve. I'm doing this to evolve. And part of that is being empathetic to the person I love's needs. So yeah, maybe it's a little enabling, but at the same time, maybe myself, because maybe I'm a little loose around the edges as well. And if I do love this person, maybe this is going to help them grow. At the same time, if the leash is too tight, like Kostuba was saying, it can be strangling and get resentful too. So, uh, yeah, I agree with you, Kostuba. We have to be empathetic for the other for other thing for this to actually work out peacefully, or you're going to grow old together, bitter with each other.
Okay, so
But
you don't want that.
understand
Yeah.
that is based in some reality too. It might be
Yeah.
based in some reality.
I didn't get
And maybe we got to check ourselves a little bit.
I didn't get the impression that there was a flirtation element in this.
I just throw that in because sometimes that's a very common thing
Okay.
with people who are in, people in anxiety. Maybe they need some validation. Maybe they need, uh, uh, maybe they're just putting themselves out there more than this other person is. I'm not saying it is, but it could be because I've seen that happen again and again.
Okay. All right. So, but you know what? I appreciate the question a lot.
Yeah.
And
It-
my heart goes out to the two of you. I suggest you both really try to understand each other and work through this together.
Try to understand. All right, let's go on with our questions. Good question.
All right.
Whee!
Why don't I read the questions, because sometimes you're coming
Okay.
in a little
Yeah, let's
choppy
do that.
from the
Let's
road.
do that.
Okay, this coming in from Chad via Discord. He's got two questions actually.
Okay.
Maybe we take them one at a time. There's a similar element in this question, actually. He writes, in addition to Prabhupada, is it beneficial at times to get wisdom and truths from other teachers? Let's say, for example, Muji or Ramdas, etc. It just seems that at times there are times where these overlap and universality amongst it. Just I think there's some problem in the grammar of the sense, but I think what he's saying is it seems that sometimes there's a lot of overlap in universality amongst so many teachers. I wouldn't suggest having multiple gurus, but to accept truth and wisdom wherever it is presented and from whomever. So that's the first question, Raghunath. Does it make sense to get wisdom from other teachers? He's given a couple examples there, Muji,
Right.
Ramdas. Is that a wise approach? Is that
For me, it's the
dangerous approach?
same exact answer.
Same
And
exact
it was the same thing. I was a young brahmachari. I had a book that was not part of Prabhupada's books, and it was like forbidden. Even my book was forbidden by some people, by some,
Your book
senior
was forbidden?
devotees. Well, not my present book, but
zone.
when I was young, I wrote a book, a Q&A book with Satyaraj Prabhu, and it
was
got forbidden.
bogus.
It got banned in certain places.
What did you say?
The interesting thing is the book made a bunch of people devotees. So it's like, sort of like they just felt like, for whatever reason, it was not authorized at that time. And I was always sort of pushing. I'm always just sort of pushing the limits of that leash. I'm trying to snap that leash.
Okay.
So it's the same thing. Can we take other things in? You got to be careful. You're off the leash now. You want to do whatever you want. You do whatever you want. Just don't wander into the road. There's a reason why there is a leash. There is a reason why there's people saying. There's a reason why people are conservative. It's not all because they're just trying to control you. At the same time, there's there's also, we don't want to be smothered as well. So I think in Wisdom of the Sages, there's a beautiful, healthy balance in our community. And that's what I wanted to say from that unorthodox TV show. We are tethered to the tradition, yet we express bhakti in new ways. And we have a type of freedom. And in that freedom, we remain tethered to our disciplines. And I find it's a great way to be. I love where we're at actually with this community.
All right.
Matter of fact, sometimes we get people who just sort of wander into our Zoom group and they are tethered to a very tight leash, and you can pick up everything on the message board that they're saying. And I was just like, where did this guy come from? You know what I mean?
It doesn't belong in our community. Well,
It
that was
doesn't
part
belong.
of what
It's
we
just sort of doesn't.
w-
Yeah, it's not really like the mood of our
our
community,
core
and that's why
values.
we're very careful of who we invite on the podcast, because our community is like that, tethered. But there's like also we can flap our wings a little bit.
Yeah, actually, you and I, along with Linda, we just
Flap your wings, Kastuba. Come on,
I'm not flapping.
come on, flap them.
I'm not gonna do that.
Everybody's flapping them.
Okay, but we discussed establishing, clarifying, getting down on paper for wisdom of the sages what are our core values, right?
Yeah,
And we borrowed a couple from the Bhakti Center, which I was kind of involved in helping develop those. But I think we all thought that they translated over to what we were doing very nicely. And two of those core values, I think we read one of them yesterday, right? Or was that a mission
Yeah.
statement or something? I forget what we read. But no, that was one of the core values. Okay, here's the other two, right? Yesterday we had about focus on the essence. And then the other two were, one was called firmly rooted and the other is called branching out, right? So firmly rooted, it means firmly rooted with faith and loyalty to the bhakti tradition of Sri Chaitanya as taught and exemplified by Srila Prabhupada. We could talk a lot about that, but just very fundamentally, it's saying we want what we share on this podcast and what we share through Wisdom of the Sages, whether it's the sage groups or any other kind of anything that's part of Wisdom of the Sages, that it be firmly rooted in that tradition. And actually, we see Srila Prabhupada as a uniquely important figure in all of this, and the way that he presented bhakti, we're following in his footsteps. And so we're careful. We want to be careful that what we're presenting is authentic and growing from through that. And then, but the other side is branching out, that through a culture of inclusion, seeing every soul as important in Krishna service and reaching out with non-judgmental compassion and thoughtfulness to make the message of bhakti relevant and accessible. So I think the example you just gave, maybe someone pops up on our chat board and maybe they got that firmly rooted, but not the branching out mood. Right. And so it's kind of like you really don't fit in because that you haven't embodied the core values that are part of this community. And it can stand out like a sore thumb, like right off the bat.
Sure.
Now, for me to get right into this question, it's a really interesting question. There's a couple ways that I would approach this. First, I would say this. One part of it begins with trying to understand who we're talking about, right? Because if it's a person that's come to a certain level of commitment, and they say, I want to be a practicing Gaudiya Vaishnava as a follower of Srila Prabhupada and the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, et cetera, et cetera. If they've made that commitment, right? If they've clarified that much, then I would speak to that person in a different way than I would speak to a person that hasn't come to that conclusion. You understand? Like, until a person said, that's what I want, then it might be a bit of an imposition to say that that's how you should be focused. But if you've already come and say, I want to practice this, well, if that's what you're saying, then I can tell you that hearing from these other people is likely not going to help you very much.
Could be confusing.
It could be confusing. Or in relation to that, for that person, I would likely approach it like this. I would say, I want you to be able to make up your own mind about these things. I want you to come to a level where you can apply your own well-informed discernment to these kind of questions. But I would also say, let's get you. And the way that I approach these things is, I do have that faith in Srila Prabhupada and what he taught, that when I approach those questions, I want to see it through the lens of his teachings. And so if this is the tradition that you also would like to practice in, then what I would suggest is you get well informed, read the entire Bhagavad Gita and all the commentaries by Srila Prabhupada, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Nectar Devotion. Let's say that is a minimum, right? Read it, question it with people that have a deep understanding in it and that you respect, that to you seem to embody it all well. Get your questions answered, get your understanding clear. Now take your own discernment, that now you're well informed on discernment, and see about these different teachers, and if you feel that there's anything inspiring coming from them. Now, if it's someone that's just coming in straight off the street and they haven't even come close to that kind of thing, then I would approach it in a different way. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing is this. When I look at it through the lens that I look at it through the lens of bhakti, as it's taught by Srila Prabhupada, as it's taught by the Goswamis of Vrindavan, as it's taught by Sri Chaitanya, I can look at some of these popular quote-unquote guru figures, and some of them I see as that person is articulating very well Vedanta, the teachings of Vedanta, right? And even in a way that is helpful and harmonious, and I may pick up things from them that I think are helpful, particularly if they're not antagonistic to the essence of bhakti, right? Like, in other words, there's certain people, certain of those teachers that I would say that person is not a faker. That person is. I'll give you 3 names right off the bat. Okay. These are people that they have conclusions that are different from our acharyas, but I see that they're genuine and they're not faking. One is old school, which is Shivananda, right?
Yes and no.
Swami Shivananda. Yes and no what?
Yes and no, I think.
Yes and no what?
I read a lot of books on Shivananda, and he goes back and forth, it seems, as a personalist and an impersonalist.
No, he's definitely.
I mean, I like his
impersonalist.
books. I like his readings.
There's no doubt that he's an impersonalist. So
He also glorifies Lord Chaitanya.
He does.
He also glorifies Lord
Kirtan
Chaitanya.
and Sankirtan, and I see him as a genuine practitioner. This is my point. He's not someone out to trick people on an ego trip.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I trust his integrity.
Yeah. Now, Ram Dass was mentioned here. When I see Ram Dass's stuff, I say the guy is a really good communicator, and he's genuine. He's practicing this in his life. He's got some really good realizations on Vedanta, and he knows how to communicate those in a way that's really understandable for people.
Definitely an empowered teacher, and with some deep realizations.
Yeah, I don't see him as having the full understanding of bhakti that comes, through the Goswamis and through Prabhupada. I don't see him. So there's definitely differences there, but I see him as a genuine person, a genuine teacher, someone that's got some clear realizations of bhakti and communicates very well. I would say the same thing about Eckhart Tolle. Like, if I read his books, it's not someone bluffing. It's not someone just throwing out. There's other guys out there that are just totally bluffing, right? That are just there's some really big popular.
There's some
names.
Bluffers out there.
They're just trying to convince
names,
you that they're enlightened.
Yeah, that drives me nuts.
That stuff makes me sick to my core. It's like it's actually, you know what? If you want to write your own book about your own ideas about life, go for it. But if you want to pose as if you're some kind of representative of the authentic, spiritual tradition that grows out of the sacred texts of India, leave them alone. Just leave that stuff alone.
Agreed.
A lot of those people, I would say maybe, I don't know, but a lot of the big popular ones, to me, it's not, hearing from them is not only not helpful, it's actually destructive. It's like, it's real crummy stuff that they're putting out there in the guise of being some kind of enlightened teaching.
I mean, that being said, they might just say something that of truth, and you can be like, oh yeah, and you could use it for your own path. But yeah, it can like kick you off the train tracks as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So all that being said, if you are someone that listens to this podcast on a daily basis, and you regularly, and you're feeling inspired by it, and you're saying, I would like to practice bhakti yoga, in the way that these people practice, then I would suggest, as I said earlier, read Bhagavad Gita as it is. Read Srimad Bhagavatam, read Chaitanya Charitamrita, read Nectar Devotion. You can do that in a year if you're focused, right? You could read all of that in a year and a half, something like that.
It's a tall order. Yeah.
A bit of a tall order, but okay, let's say 2 years, right? 2 years, and write down your questions and seek out the answers to them and see if you can find good, consistent, clear, inspiring answers from people. And after that year and a half or 2 years, then you're going to be more well informed to be able to see where you find truth and where someone's just bluffing, you know.
That's a great point. I mean, read these books, even if you're not 100% sure, but you feel like, well, there's some truth there. I'm going to go further. Read it, imbibe it as much as you can, because I'll tell you this, really studying the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, you will develop the discernment that when you hear a guru speak or someone who's claiming to be a guru or their followers claim them that he is an enlightened being, you'll be able to say, nonsense. Or yeah, maybe you'll develop that
how do we
discernment
know?
because generally we go into it like hearing from, thought leaders and people who are supposed to be enlightened. There's no metric for is he enlightened? Is he enlightened? These people say he's an author,
Yeah.
The Bhagavatam more than anything will give you a discernment of what is he teaching. Is it an authorized teaching representing the culture? Is it the guy just talking about? There's also very smart people, which you can apply things they say to life. That not necessarily enlightened people, but they're more enlightened than you are, perhaps. But the Bhagavatam will give you that way to measure where's this guy coming from?
Yeah.
Or this lady coming from? Or are they just making this stuff up?
Yeah.
Are they just making it up?
A lot of times they make it up with their own kind of lore of, their moment of enlightenment, when that happened, or, when I choose to leave my body, I will show you all this. They get into all this kind of crap. And
Right.
I'm looking for a person that's saying, that's not even trying to show me that they're quote unquote enlightened. What they're trying to do is saying, I'm representing a tradition and I'm trying to make it understandable for you. And and I'm nothing special. When you'd hear Srila Prabhupada speaking, you say, I'm just the servant here, right? I'm just trying to just do my part to take what's been handed to me and hand it to the next person. And I'm, and that's my role. I'm not posing as some kind of special, I've had all these special mystical experiences and so on. How am I going to measure that? How am I going to know that, that would be the first thing that the phony's going to do, right? Is have their own kind of little history. And the person that's really got that is likely not going to even be talking about it at all, because they know that that's not the essence and it's not going to help anyone. What's going to help someone is to really understand these teachings clearly, and so then they focus on that. All right.
As soon as someone starts giving me their spiritual bio of why they are in their very exalted place, I start to wonder why. Generally, the great souls, and not just like our guru or our guru's guru, but when you read the tradition, these characters of the Bhagavatam, they're not trying to like flatter themselves to impress us.
Yeah.
They're impressive by their humility and their behavior and the desire to give instead of to be the center of everything.
Right.
That's what was so impressive. When I first came to the ashram, it was always not about the speaker, it was about the speaker's appreciation of the guru, of the previous masters, of the great saints, etc. I was like, oh, I get it. This is a tradition. They're following a tradition here. It's not just one cult of personality, this guy with all this interesting insight. There's very insightful, interesting, charismatic people, but this is not necessarily that. I've met people who study our tradition, were tethered to the tradition, that are not charismatic, but
not at all.
They have some type of not at all. They're not even that intelligent, but they actually have. But they actually
genuine
can give some truth, genuine truth, and they have no ego about them, and it shines through.
Right.
Intelligence and charm are secondary to this stuff.
Okay.
All right, that was good. We're running out of time here. It's 8:53.
Why don't we do this one second one that Chad had?
Well, second part of the
Yeah.
question, right?
Yeah. He says, one other question. What are your recommendations for a devotee who lives too far from a temple, yet just has a small kirtan study group? Unsure of finding a spiritual teacher, maybe initiation someday, etc.
I think he's doing everything perfect, or she's doing everything perfect. That's exactly what you got to do. Have a little kirtan study group.
Yeah.
And guess what? You're doing it. It's one of those things like, what do I do about this? You're doing it. You have people come over, you hear and chant together, and you try to raise the bar with the people.
Well, it sounds like this person's also concerned about finding their guru or their spiritual teacher.
Guru will
They're
come.
kind of,
Guru will come.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always
When
want
you're
everything
ready.
quick.
Ultimately there's no obstacle. Ultimately, if you're sincere, you're gonna, you will find that person. This is something that Linda, and Raghunath and I were all meeting together about. That we're feeling fortunate to have her getting involved in helping us pull some things together and manage our things, because Raghunath and I, there's like a lot of resources out there, but we both have, our bandwidth is all taken up. But we've been meaning for a long time to provide a lot more support for our listeners. We've got the Sage groups, and that's a great way to go. You can really get some nice community there, connect with some good people, maybe even get a bit of mentorship, have a place where you can share your thoughts and your ideas. Sage groups are a great way to do that. But we also want to develop the Sage Academy, where you can really study everything you can need to study, bring in lots of really good teachers there, people that we really trust to do it well. Learn not just philosophy, although that's really important, but learn culture, learn ritual, learn cooking, learn whatever, all the things that we were given when we moved into ashrams, we want to provide for people online.
Dance. Yeah, sure. Come on. Let's learn some
what kind of
Bharatanatyam, Kostuba.
Bharatanatyam.
You and me.
I want to see you
with
get your neck moving like however they do that.
My eye mudras.
So that your head's kind of going like sideways.
Yeah. Eye mudras, chin mudras.
So in any case, we hope to be able to provide you a lot more of that kind of support, hopefully in the near future. So keep your eyes open for that, Chad.
It's a cultural conquest. It's a cultural revolution.
Yeah.
Deeper. Listening to these on my way down here today, I've been listening to these classes by Radhika Raman that you recommended on the Srimad Bhagavatam on YouTube.
Yeah, good stuff.
The glories of the Srimad Bhagavatam, part 1 and part 2. And I was just like, man, I got to dive deeper into the culture. Like, if I understood Sanskrit, I'd have so much more appreciation for the Bhagavatam, I feel. This stuff really draws you in.
When we had Radhika Raman on the show once, but I think it was a day where you weren't there. And I asked him, Professor Ravi Gupta, I asked him straight off, I think it was even may have been my first question. I said, just tell us the truth. How much are we missing out on by not knowing Sanskrit? When we read these texts, we're thriving on it. We're feeling inspired. Yeah. We're getting so much from it. But how much are we missing out on? He said, well, I'm sorry to tell you, you are missing out on a lot.
Wow.
He wasn't saying so much in terms of meaning exactly, but in terms of the beauty of it, the poetry of it, the sophistication of it, the flavor of it. A lot of that we're missing out on because we don't know the Sanskrit. And I that's part of what I enjoyed about those. In those talks, he begins those talks, the glories of the Srimad Bhagavatam, by defining how the Bhagavatam is so unique, even in terms of all the different Puranas, in terms of its structure, in terms of its language, in terms of its theological thrust, its clarity. He's saying most of the Puranas, they kind of are like a loose kind of collection of different stories with different messages, sometimes even seeming to contradict each other. But he says when you get to the Bhagavatam, first of all, it's presented in a far more sophisticated, mature, well-developed and difficult level of Sanskrit. And he was saying that when you're learning Sanskrit, when you're just a beginner, you kind of get trained by studying verses from the Mahabharata, the Puranas, but your test is Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, if you can understand, comprehend, you know, communicate on that, you know, towards that level. So it's there's so much there in Bhagavatam that's unique, and he really, in those talks, he really kind of lays it out. Then you get a better, you say, oh, I get it. Vyasadeva was like collecting all these different stories, and they all had value, but they were difficult to discern what's the point here. Then he composed this super Purana, right? That's like, what, it was a masterwork. It was his super masterwork, you know, in terms of its poetry and in terms of the clarity of its message, in terms of how you just, he said he presented it more like a PhD dissertation when you get to Bhagavatam. It's like it's a well-reasoned, clear argument that's being presented, whereas you might have a hard time discerning that from all the other works.
And he, you know, by knowing the language also, he was saying like how Vyas himself said, you know, all these other great works that are important in Vedic culture, they're practically despicable compared to this. They're practically despicable. And he used a word that we wouldn't pick up on necessarily unless you understood the Sanskrit.
All right, Raghu. I think we're done.
It was good. It was good. We did it. We did it in the car. Thanks, Mara. Thanks everybody for joining us. And thanks for the Qs and the A's. Tomorrow's Gaur Purnim, special day. A special day about Lord Chaitanya. Looking forward to the celebrations in Alachua. If there's a temple near you, maybe you could go check it out. It's a full moon. The Lord appears on the full moon. And
did you freeze up on us?
It's a special day to maybe go a little bit. Oh, am I freezing?
No, you're keep going.
Perhaps.
Good day for
okay,
what?
It's a special day to go a little internal. Go a little internal. Maybe do a little bit more chanting, a little bit more reading, a little bit more time with yourself. Maybe some journaling. Tomorrow's that day. It's a magic day. Put yourself out there to Lord Krishna, and it's a power day.
Maybe chanting Hare Krishna, maybe a little kirtan.
Maybe that. Maybe journaling about Hare Krishna and kirtan.
Journaling about doing kirtan.
Maybe writing a children's story about Krishna. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna go because it's sort of awkward here in the car. I'm a little bit distracted, but I really appreciate people tuning in. I'm somewhere in. I just passed the DC Beltway.
Oh,
yeah, I know. I'm very close to Henry's house.
New Potomac Temple, Rogue. Come on.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that, but I'm wishing them well.
Okay.
I'm wishing them well. Yeah, Kostuba's like, okay. You know, he said to me yesterday, Mary, he's like, okay, I got a great idea. You stop off in New York on your way down. It'll be Sunday. There won't be that much traffic, and I'm going to give you something. We'll give a gift. We'll give a gift to Linda. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. I love Linda, but no, I'm not driving into Manhattan and out of Manhattan with a carload of kids on my 15-hour journey. But I like how you think, Steva.
All right.
And it was great having you at the house.
But they're opening up the temple, Raghunath. There's only one day that this ever happened.
I know. You should go. I think you should go.
You're right there.
You're close. You're not that far. They have the Acela train in New York. Boom, you're right there. 2 hours. A 4-hour trip done in 2 hours.
This afternoon, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, I think you can. You got to prioritize. I can help you with your priority list. I can be that guy for you.
You're speaking nonsense, my friends.
Nonsense. Lord Vishnu is not nonsense, my friend. Madam Mohanji. Don't miss out on this valuable opportunity.
All right, guy.
It's a beautiful day for a beautiful day. World's a magical place. Once you invite Lord Chaitanya into your life, the mundane world becomes magical.
Oh, now you want to hang on.
Huh?
Now you want to hang on. Now you want to talk.
No, I'm getting ready to say goodbye. I'm doing my outro. Let the magic continue to flow, bro. Harry Bo.
Harry Bo.